if Will loves God like really good, he's not going to just give him that Audi R8 that he wants real bad.
Audi
RDA8.
I know that was hard.
That's kind of a hard one.
All right.
Audi
That was
R8.
almost- that's like throwback to thesaurus.
All right.
From Abby.
So that Audi
accompanist.
So
Audi
if
R8.
you do all the right things, God will give you an Audi R8.
He's going to rain it down from heaven like manna.
So
that is all the
some
pieces.
people will
I
take
love
the
that.
verse
That's
to
right.
mean that that God will do that, and
And then they'll be mad at God
and
when
they're
it doesn't happen.
yeah.
But it's
well,
also
hey, I'm
you're doing that
delighting
for the
in
wrong
you.
reason. You're only doing it to like get what you want.
Right.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 9 of the Quartercast,
Woohoo.
Standing Firm in Today's Culture.
There we go.
Yes.
Today, we are going to be discussing, what are we discussing?
Desires of the heart.
Oh,
There's
I would
that
have
I
desired to have
personality.
remembered that. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about the desires of our heart. How did they get there?
And Logan is so glad that you guys are here.
Yes.
Hey,
Caleb.
take it or leave it.
Caleb now has a new bit. I don't
He
know.
does.
Yeah, he's like really hammering on this. You have to say we're glad you're here.
So we're glad
You're
y'all
getting
are
cut
here.
out of this podcast.
No matter what Logan says.
Yeah, we're
glad
happy
you're
you're here. Whatever.
Yes.
Good grief.
So what are we gonna say about this? What do you want to say about desires of the heart? Do you have any intro stuff related to it? What do you think,
I don't
Abby?
know
What
if
do
it's
you
intro
think?
stuff. I have some deep stuff to say about
Do
it.
you?
Yeah, it's
Cool.
just not intro material.
Well, bring it.
So
My heart is
I
very
can start out
desiring.
by.
Yes,
Yeah.
your heart is very desiring. All of our. What do you
that-
think?
I think that we can very easily misinterpret the way that verse is leaning.
Yes.
When
What
it
verse?
says
So let me read the verse.
you
'cause
wanted
nobody
to talk
heard it.
about the verse. I was trying not to take it away from you.
So Caleb's glad that you're here, and he really wants
I
to
was
read
trying
this
to be
verse.
respectful.
Well, that's good. But let
Well,
me
you
give the
just said
verse, and
that
then
verse.
Abby's going to keep telling you. So Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." In verse 5, right after it says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." Those are very interesting verses. And especially the first one, 4, has been framed certain ways. What were you going to say,
Yes.
Abby?
Yes, is that people can take that as what I want, God will give to me, instead of God is placing desires in your heart
Yes.
to therefore fulfill for His glory.
Which means we have to do inventory of where desires come from, don't we?
Yes.
And we've got to do inventory of comparing our desires to the revealed heart of God
Yep.
based on truth. So there'll be times where He gives us desires, and there's plenty of times where we do that on our own, don't we?
Yeah.
And then have an enemy do that or whatever.
Oh,
What
yeah.
else? What do y'all think? What do you
Well,
think, Abby?
I think it's interesting that the first part of the verse kind of gives you an action,
Sure.
and then it's God's action.
Yeah.
And so, like, take delight in the Lord. If you study what delight means, it's almost like fulfillment or satisfaction.
Yeah.
And so, like, when Christ becomes the fulfillment or satisfaction of your heart, then your heart is desiring of things that are within His will for your life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so, therefore, why would He keep things from you that are fitting to the plan and purpose that He has for you?
Right.
Correct.
So,
Yeah,
And
I mean,
then
it's like
just-
we want to take that verse out of context sometimes, or
Right.
just quote like part of it, and it's not a good idea to do that. I mean, it's even better if you know who he was talking to, you know, in what time. There's all kinds of things.
So
Who's
it's-
doing the talking?
It's not like if Will loves God like really good, he's not going to just give him that Audi R8 that he wants real bad.
Audi
RDA8.
I know that was hard.
That's kind of a hard one.
All right.
Audi
That was
R8.
almost- That's like throwback to thesaurus
All right.
from Abby.
Or
So
accompanist,
that Audi
accompanist.
So
Audi
if you
R8.
do all the right things, God will give you an Audi R8.
He's going to rain it down from heaven like manna.
So
that is all the
some
pieces.
people will
I
take
love
the
that.
verse
That's
to
right.
mean that that God will do that, and
And then they'll be mad at God
and
when
they're
it doesn't happen.
yeah.
But it's
they go,
also
hey, I'm
you're doing that
delighting
for the
in
wrong
you.
reason. You're only doing it to like get what you want.
Right. I mean,
The second verse right after it did say, "Commit our way to the Lord." So the first one, delight yourself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. Verse 5 says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him," and then basically it says He will act. And so there's a lot of relational engagement
Relational engagement,
required
yes.
with us and God that are for our benefit. But we got to continue to basically delight in him, like Caleb says, finds our sustenance, let him be our sufficiency, then commit our way to the Lord. And then when you do that, it's hard to commit a way to the Lord and trust him that a way that he's revealed is not a good or healthy way
Right.
through already revealed scripture in his heart.
And,
so-
and it is odd. So it's always been odd to me. And I have even lived in it where you're in active sin in your life knowingly, and you're asking and thinking that God is going to bless that.
Mm.
And there's just not, he's not going to
And we've all
do that.
done
He
that.
doesn't bless
Sitting here, all
sin.
of us.
Right.
So what comes to mind when we say stuff like this, y'all, in your own lives, to where we can give somebody watching a story about, okay, I was asking God to bless something that was not according to his revealed will or heart in our lives. Let's do that first, and we'll come and hit the second part with some things that are good that we want real bad, and it wasn't for us potentially,
Yeah.
that are actually good. So let's hit the first one, which is, what if our desires are, again, not according to the Lord's way that's been revealed?
We're not delighting ourselves in the Lord at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
We're not finding our fulfillment in him.
I've
It-
got kind of a story.
Yeah, go.
So when we were, it's kind of both and of the two examples that we're gonna hit on. But while we were in Emerge, I figured out pretty quickly through the Holy Spirit that I was gonna marry Logan.
Emerge was our
Yes,
Church
Emerge was
internship.
yes. I'm sorry if you've not seen the episode where we shared our testimonies. Yes, we were in a church internship, and that's how we met. And you're not supposed to date. And so pretty early on, I knew that I was going to marry him, but we can't date.
couldn't
So
blame her.
Can't blame her.
I was very frustrated isn't the right word, but I was very just I guess surprised that that's the time frame that the Lord had that put in my life, because I was thinking I'm going to go to Emerge and then I'm going to graduate and I'm going to go either to SCAD, the Savannah School of Art and Design, or I'm going to move to New York and live in a crappy apartment and try to make it in the fashion world. Those were my two options.
Until the best
So
thing that
glad
ever
you
happened
did
to
New
you
York.
walked through that door, and you were
So
like,
I can
"Oh
go to New
my
York.
Isn't that
God,
wild?
who is this guy? He's amazing."
So
Oh, she
those were the two things that I had planned for. Those were my options. Those
Your
were the only
plans.
two.
Your plans.
And my
Your
plans. And through the duration of the 9 months of figuring out very, very kind of slowly at first, but then very quickly that was not what God had for me. It was like it took me a minute to warm up to that, but then also trusting that what he had for me was better. And that I would still get to do the things that I wanted to do within the fashion industry. I literally wanted to create wardrobe for Broadway. I wanted to do, that's the things that I said I wanted to do. Wanted to be able to do costumes and wardrobe and all that kind of stuff. And I got to do it for Christian artists and do it on a completely
at
different
the top of their game.
yeah, Grammy Award winning. Like, I got to do it for people who I never would. I styled a shoot with Dolly Parton. And so there were things that I got to do that I never would have dreamed being able to do. But
And you met a guy that like crossed off a couple of lists.
I'm getting there.
What part of the story do I come in?
So-
sorry.
So we
Where do I
so
fit in
anyway,
this?
so I drove to the beach one day, and it's when I figured out that was the slow build up to, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get to do the two things that I thought I was going to get to do. One of the two things that I thought I was going to get to do after this. I'm going to stay here in Florida, and I'm going to pursue a relationship that will lead to marriage, and I have no idea what's going to happen after that. And I'm a planner, and I like to have just even an idea of what's going to happen, and I didn't. And so I went to the beach one day and I broke down, and I pretty much just handed the Lord
You went by yourself to
Yep.
spend time with God.
Yep.
Yeah.
But in my car, I didn't get out because I knew that I was about to just have a fight breakdown with God of I don't know what you're calling me to, and I'm terrified. It is exactly the opposite of what I thought for a very long time that I wanted to do, which is go into the fashion world. be a creative, do this kind of thing. So I got even to the point in that breakdown of, which I'll explain later. I got down to the point where I was like, if you want me to go to school and be a teacher and marry this guy, and that's what you have for me, then I trust you to take this desire away from me that I thought you put in my heart. Take it, I give it back to you. And if you have something completely the opposite for me, I trust that that is better than the thing that I've been dreaming about since I was a kid.
And I think that's where it's really, really difficult for us is we're like, I thought you gave me this desire. And
Yeah.
now I'm in a place
And then
where I'm like, am I surrendering this to you? I thought you gave it to me. Like,
Yeah.
why did you give it to me just for me to surrender it to you?
Yep.
And it's so.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
Sometimes it's
and he
difficult.
gave it right back to me in a completely different way, but in so much better than I could have ever imagined. I didn't have to struggle to go and live in New York and make ends meet at a place that's one of the most
Praise
expensive
God, you
places in
didn't
the
have to go
world.
there.
No, we're glad you didn't go there for all kinds of
I got
reasons.
I got to get married young, and I've had a wonderful, almost 8-year marriage, and have a little girl. Like, so many things that happen I wouldn't have had at this point. In fact, I told you, don't count on me being the one to get married and give you grandkids because I want to go pursue a career, and
Really?
and here I am. And
Well,
so what the
I
Lord
should
had
have
for
said
me.
that.
Not
What
true
the Lord
either.
had for me was so much better than I was dreaming about, but it still was parts of what I had been dreaming about, just in His way, which is so
I mean,
much better.
you too got to live in that world in the biggest way. And I've told so many people, like, the way that God took you there was uncomfortable for me because I thought you going to college and getting this degree was the way things needed to be done. And God was revealing that wasn't the way you were going to go. None of my kids were going to go that way. In fact, I didn't know that at the time. And then He gave you this gift and the desire of your heart in so many ways, and no resume. People have resumes that never get them in the doors, that were flung wide open for both Abby and Logan.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it's
Well, it was even through Logan's God dream being
Yeah.
realized that I was able to do the things that I was able to do. So, again, if I wouldn't have stayed and been married to him, I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I got to do.
Through just relationship that I had
Yep.
through music and just being willing to go up to people and be like, hey, my wife's amazing.
Torin, you
super
guys
ta-
how we
li-
got
li-
Torin
yeah,
Wells.
yeah.
The Caleb cruise.
Just hung out with him
Yeah.
like a month or two ago, and
Yeah.
like we still,
Still relationship
yeah,
there. Yeah.
it's pretty crazy how God just opens doors. But
Yep. So that's an example
That's
of
a great story, Abby.
getting to the point of where I'm like, if this isn't what you have for me, I give it back to you. But then it being handed back and still happening just in such a different way than I thought it was going to.
So beautiful.
Very neat.
You got an example too? I've got an example when you're done.
Yeah.
You go.
You go.
No, I want to hear you.
Go.
I want to hear your voice.
I'm kind of like in the middle of like not knowing
Mm.
like why God would be leading me to surrender something. So for everybody here obviously knows, but for anybody listening that didn't know, I've had a social media platform gain over 300,000 followers, TikTok to be exact. And so a few years ago was super passionate about just ministry, about just sharing the gospel. I actually really enjoyed making like short videos and preaching in them, and God used them in incredible ways. Hundreds of thousands, millions sometimes. The video
views.
reach
Views,
views of the videos. And so, anyways, this was something that was really cool. In fact, I still have some cool friendships
Yeah.
that were formed through that. But really, about 2 years ago, I was like, "This is so cool." I think this is going to open a lot of doors. I could see this being something that places me in a position where I'm like on staff at a really cool church, really growing church, a church that's making a difference in the world in major ways, like things like this. This is what my mindset was. I was like, God, this is so cool. Can't believe you're doing this for me. And now as I sit here, I'm like literally actually looking at giving away my account because I feel the Lord completely changing my desires towards those things. And also the app and every other app has become dangerous in many ways. But anyways, so just like having that and being in a place where I was like, God, this is really cool. What doors are you going to open through this? Obviously, in that time, I'm like, I'm open to whatever you want for me because I'm on the high of that.
Because you
And-
think it's that.
And not to mention,
And you got
It's-
some oxygen from kind of being known.
I was going to
and-
say, not to mention, like it's super easy to feel fulfilled in that because I had so many people communicating with me.
I mean,
people
we'd be
knew
places
me.
and people would recognize you.
I was
yes.
in the airport
Yeah.
in like Michigan or something, and somebody was like, "Hey, I follow you on TikTok. You're awesome."
Yeah.
And so like it was so cool. And so I was in this place where I was like, God, what do you want to do through this? You know, I surrender. I'm surrendered to your will. You know, and now I'm like, well, Lord, what do you want me to do with it? Because I thought you were going to open some really cool doors. I'm doing a job I never thought I was going to be doing. In a position, single, thought I'd be married by now. So like, there's so many things that just look completely different. And so I'm like kind of in the middle where I'm like, Lord, I thought you gave me these desires. I thought these things were from you. But I do want to trust you. And if they were from you, here they are back. You know, it's kind of like the story of Abraham and Isaac, where
Yeah, I thought about
God
that too.
gave Abraham a son, and then God's like, sacrifice your son. And so, anyways, God's always, he's with you through it all. He's definitely with you in the middle. And I'm confident of that. There's not a part of me that is questioning God's faithfulness but I can say that some days are difficult
Sure.
where I'm not questioning God's faithfulness. I know he's good. I know he's faithful, but I'm also just frustrated.
Well,
Well,
and
we
it's
don't-
like, how long is this going to take?
Yeah.
I mean, that would
Yeah,
be
you
a,
don't
when I was-
understand his economy, and he's working his economy out
yeah.
through the process. Because what happens for us with all the desires of our heart, whatever ones we're talking about,
Yeah.
is we frame up what those desires mean
Yeah.
in a human way of framing it. And what we're dealing with is a God who will give us desires like what Caleb's talking about. They were good. That's a good framing. And then what Abby's talking about, a good framing, the way Abby's able to say, okay, the way I had it framed, God reframed it. He still restored some of those desires and made them reality in a much better way. Caleb is in a process of figuring out what's the reframing mean. How will it be better? Because it will be. In long term, he'll be able to look back and look at that and know that in his knower. Because right now there's still questions of, okay, what are you doing? Am I surrendering it again? I call that like putting it on the altar. And the way I frame that is when I was their age, pretty much when I was I was 19, I was Will's age. In college, I was involved in my first small group environments through what's called discipleship back then, and was confronted with the lordship of Christ. And the way that was confronted to me was through marriage, because when I was, again, a 9-year-old kid, if you'd have said, what are you going to do when you grow up? I said, I don't know. I'm going to get married and we're going to change the world. And I would have told you that as a 19-year-old freshman in college too. There had never been a time I'd considered me in the future not married, ever. And marriage is a good thing. Okay, it's the foundational
Especially to
human
me.
relationship God established, and so what I thought at that time when I was confronted with lordship is my small group leader asked me, "Have you ever asked God if you're supposed to be married?"
Goodness.
And I was like, "I'm not interested in that. Thank you." Okay, let's move on to the
Spoken
next
like a true
item.
D.
Okay, because I'll surrender alcohol. I'll be happy to surrender drugs. I'm not going to do those. I'm not going to surrender these. But as far as marriage, a good thing, I'm getting married. And he asked me a couple more times, and it really aggravated me that this guy was insisting on me, in essence, putting marriage on an altar and going, God, if you want to take that away and burn it up for me, then I give you the ability to do that. And so what I realized is I'd never submitted that to God as a 19-year-old kid, and I wasn't very interested in it, but I knew I needed to do that. And so I embarked on about a 30-plus day journey of praying and asking God, okay, And I didn't mean the prayer, y'all. I'm telling y'all, for about the first 10 days, I didn't mean it. But I prayed, okay, if you don't want me to get married, I won't get married. And I don't mean that. If you're going to need to help me mean this, because I'm supposed to let you be Lord, but I really want to get married.
I'm thrilled that you did.
Okay,
Yes.
me too. And
I am too,
And
actually.
so and then somewhere between 10 and 20 days, I started to mean, okay, if you don't want me to get married, I'm going to trust your God and I'm not. And man, you can reframe it. I can't see, God, how this is. I have zero interest in celibacy, but if I'm going to be on my own, help me. And then somewhere after 20 to 30, there was a day somewhere toward 30 where I knew when I prayed, I want you, if you don't want me to get married, I won't get married. And I ask you to change my heart. And I meant it somewhere in the 30, right around 30 range. And I knew I meant it. And here's what's amazing is obviously God did. God knew I meant it. And he was working me to a place over something good to where he was Lord of that desire. And what
There's
he
the
did
key.
is and
The
it
Lord
is
of
a
the
huge
desire.
key. And it's something similar to what Caleb's learning and walking in and you discovered.
And then
we're
story
going
I
I'd love
have
to
too.
share.
We're gonna-
something
yeah.
if we-
And
We
so,
will.
so
We'll talk about
obviously, so
stories.
y'all know, God kept the desire there. He gave me freedom and said, "So you can still want to be married. That is going to be a part of your future," which was super exciting to me. But I really did get to a place where I was willing not to be, and y'all would obviously never be watching this podcast if it hadn't happened. All right, Logan,
That's
what you got?
crazy tough in the world we live in today.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I just hearing you talk about just like being in the middle. I remember this is just a random detail, and I'll share their story of like we were in the middle, and I remember this guy talking about a desert season. He was like, when you're in the middle of the desert, it feels like you're never going to leave, and it feels like it's going on forever. But as soon as it's over, it's like, oh man, that wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? And so, like for me, like music was such an important part of my life, and now I'm in my own kind of middle of like figuring out what's next. But I started playing drums when I was 12, and like that's all I wanted to do. And I knew it like immediately. Like, and that's not even really having a relationship with Jesus, but like I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And so like I grew up like playing music in bands and like doing whatever. I was like so manipulative and running from the Lord that I was willing to like get involved with like a church ministry to try and like finagle like can my band borrow a church van so we can go on a tour? Like that's why I was there. And running from Jesus and then
Nothing like the truth.
hey, anyway, that's just I'm an
Amazing.
open book, and
Yeah.
and I mean I hit a low point though, and I remember I'd been kind of like dealing with like depression, anxiety, like me high I, especially younger. Man, if I didn't have like approval and around people, like I was in a real low, and I had just heard this like you have got to sacrifice for God, and
Yes.
and I just did not understand the heart of our Father, you know.
Yes.
And like, oh, you like me? Like, this is like, well, I want to play drums really bad, and you're kind of mean, so you definitely don't want that for me. You know, that was kind of like how my brain was
framing,
wired.
yeah.
So I literally remember praying. I can't remember if we talked about this, but
We did.
God,
We did.
you know, if I never do what I want to do, this sucks, and whatever you have is better. And so for like a time, I just didn't even play music. Like I quit the band I was in, didn't even really want to do it at church. Like I was just like, all right, Lord, like this time's different. And but I remember about 6 or 7 months later, it was like one of the only times I've like heard, like I still don't think I audibly heard God, but it was so clear, like no, like I've called you to play me, like called you to music, and that was at 19, and I was like, well, I have no idea what that looks like.
19.
But anyway, you know, we meet. Huge church. I'd never really been anywhere like that where there's like thousands of people on the weekends. And we got married, or no, it was before we got married. We decided to we just felt led to be with our pastors, Matt and Christy Ruckel, who are at, I don't remember the name of their church in Virginia. They're amazing. We love them so much. But we went to the campus that they pastored. That was the smallest. So for me, like, oh man, this is oxygen. I'm playing on this huge stage, to go to like this church of like maybe 75 to 100 on a Sunday over 2 services. And it was really bad. The music was terrible. Me and Daniel Pratt, wherever you are, buddy, love you, man. We built that team up to have like 3 deep at every instrument. But it was like such a labor of love, and like I had no idea. I was working as a bank teller, like
Oh yeah.
it was like such a, like, even though I was like a doofus in that season, but like I was really like faithful in a lot of other
A
areas.
bank teller for you for your birthday.
I know.
Yep.
That's just
Oh.
like so funny.
Yep. And then I so it's just crazy. Like we did the obedience thing, and then like God ultimately did like reward the faithfulness, and it was
That's
like
the thing.
flung into like Nashville and playing with a massive artist and playing like first thing I ever did was at the Grand Ole Opry, and then like I think we played
Grammy
the
nomination.
Yeah,
I mean,
played
just like
played the Honda Center in LA a couple days later in front of like 30,000 people, and it's just like, oh my God. And so
Yeah.
and
but then
exceedingly abundantly.
right.
So my story is a desires of the heart too, and just thankfully when this happened with us, I had matured to a place where I could honestly say, God, if you don't want it, then I don't either, because I trust you enough that what you want for me is truly best. It is the healthiest, the best life I can have. And so Will got injured playing basketball, and we thought he had a hamstring injury.
Well, I tore in football. I tore my hamstring. It was the same leg. Not the same leg. It's the other leg that I tore in football my 10th grade year in a practice, and it was because I grew like 4 inches over the summer.
Yeah, so we thought
and I started feeling the same pain in the other hamstring, and I had been growing, and I was like, I've been growing. I started feeling the same pain that I felt when I tore it, and I was like, I think I may about tear this hamstring.
well, and I mean, even the trainer for your
Yeah.
team thought that. I mean,
She kept telling me, she was like, she knew I wasn't faking anything, and she knows I love basketball, but she was like, there's nothing wrong with you.
okay. Well, and so let me.
There's something wrong with me because I'm in a lot of pain.
And there was. And
And,
so after going to doctors, we ended up MRI, and it ended up that he had a tumor in the bone of his tibia, and we literally had a visit with an orthopedic oncologist with Will, and we had a 2-week waiting period where we were going to find out, and Will had some fear with it. I think he's talked some about that. As a parent, you're like, dear God, please, like we just do not want to go down this path with our child, and it just was a scary place. And honestly, God was just like, but what if this is the one that I have you to walk on? What if it is? And I had to really come to terms with, do I really mean it when I say, God, if I want your way more than any other way, even if it's not fun and I don't understand it and it sounds really horrible and scary? And I can honestly say, yes, I did in that moment. And so it was such a peace just to be, and obviously
It was a growing period. It was very much like getting closer with Jesus.
It was. And but the thing about it is that Will didn't have cancer. It was a benign tumor. It wasn't malignant, and everything is great. But there was a period of do you really mean what you've been saying? There was a period of surrender in there where I really did want what his desires for my life were to be what my heart desired more than anything else, even more than desiring that my child not have cancer. That's a big place. So
Very real.
yeah.
Very real. Any other thoughts related to that? So, what I want, let's just frame up the ending of this. Let me give you one more scripture to think about. So when we're talking with people, we're interacting with people, parents, marriages, families, friends, this group, when we're interacting, the desires of a person's heart are just really big deals in the world that we live in today, to the point that if somebody desires it, the world says that they should be able to get it, and it's good, it's right, no matter what it is, even if it conflicts with the
Word of
revealed
God.
heart of God.
Yeah.
And then there's times where we want something good, like marriage or children or
Health.
or success, health, or blessings financially in work or whatever. And there's times where we don't feel like we have it. And learning to actually trust God and His timing, His economy, and His goodness, because what we do is we've trusted His goodness to a point. But then
When
is
it was
He
good in
really?
our-
If we could see it, but is it good? And that is a huge opportunity. And so, so let me just read this. I want us to at the very end, just to frame up how our heart can go off of kilter. We can, even people that walk with Jesus, our hearts are very, very deep wells, if you will, that are discoveries required. And God wants us to grow in the self-awareness to where we know it. But in Jeremiah 17, 9-10, the verse says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? ? The answer in quotations continues in that verse. I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his deeds. And so the one who can understand hearts is God, the maker of hearts, and the one who can help us begin to understand ourselves and our own deep motivations. We've shared some really neat stories with y'all. I think they're cool to hear, and it's neat to hear some things expressed by my children and my wife, because of our journeys and beginning to understand ourselves and the heart of God. It's a twofold discovery process. So we would encourage you going forward to learn a prayer that we teach, and that's a simple prayer to God. Show me, show me you. Show me me, show me you. God delights in revealing Himself to us. He delights in revealing us to us.
Yes.
And our hearts are things that we've got to be in process of discovering, because these desires, these wants, need to be framed in light of this. And that's, hey, God, help me to want for me what you want for me.
Well, that
Go.
the verse that you just read, it literally says that our hearts are going to end in, like, what our hearts are desiring, there is going to be an end result,
Mm-hmm.
is what He gives the people over to their heart's desires, basically, is what that's saying. And so, like, it's us being like, God, Holy Spirit, if my heart is not desiring of something that is going to end in God's glory, then would you change my heart to desire what is going to end in
your
God's
glory.
glory?
Yep.
If that's me being married, then Lord, have your
So
will.
be
That's
it.
great, because that's what I want. But
Yeah.
Lord, if that's not what you have for me, if that's not where you're most glorified in my life, then change my heart's desires, because I want the end result to be you being most glorified in my life.
Good. And that's a super process, isn't it? It's not a boom done. It's a process. And all of this is, because it's all tied up in relationship with God Almighty. And He wants the relationship with all of us. And He wants to frame these desires and walk us into places to where we actually do let Him frame up what our heart wants.
Yeah.
And to see the good in that and to make a difference in those around us. And these are major keys to actually loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves, is to learn to frame these desires, put them to the test, ask God to show us deeply what the motivations really are, so that we can walk in health with Him and others. And so, any other feedback as we say bye to everybody?
We just want you guys to know we're so glad you're here.
Big time.
Yes.
Big
we are.
time. And so,
This was a little more somber, but it was good.
Yeah.
I love the discussion.
yeah, and we're excited about seeing you on the next episode.
Episode
Peace out.
10.
Peace out.